Okay. Hello and welcome to our presentation about challenges in mixed reality. My name is Benjamin. I'm an innovation manager at Swiss Post.
My name is Sebastien, and I'm a mixed reality developer at Swiss Post. Terms like virtual, mixed, and augmented reality do get used more often than ever, and people get confused by it. Is it all the same?
No.
Right. We like to view the devices as a continuum of reality. On the left-hand side, we have the actual reality, on which we hopefully all agree on. Then we have augmented reality, which offers an information layer on top of reality. Then we have virtual reality, which describes a completely computer-generated reality where you see and interact with virtual objects. Then we have mixed reality, which is the best of both worlds, so you can include virtual objects into the real world. In this talk, we will mainly focus on mixed reality with the Microsoft Hololens.
The Microsoft Hololens is a fully functional computer with a Windows 10 universal. That means you can't just install conventional applications on this device. You have to use apps which you can get in the Microsoft App Store. The amount of mixed reality apps is increasing day per day. These glasses has a weight of 580 grams, which is quite heavy for a device you put on your head. But at the same time, it's light for a fully functional computer. But what's inside?
Well, apart from a lot of sensors to actually track the room and find the orientation of the device in the room, there's a 32-bit processor, 2 gigabytes of RAM, 64 gigabytes of flash memory, and the graphics processor, which Microsoft calls holographic processing unit, or short HPU. Lastly, we also have some standard connectivity like Bluetooth and Wi-Fi.
There are several ways to interact with the Microsoft HoloLens. First of all, you have a pointer which is in the middle centered of your field of view. You can move this pointer with head movements. Microsoft calls this interaction gaze. Furthermore, we have two gestures, the bloom and the air tab. The bloom is basically the home button of your device. So you can leave applications and enter the main menu or leave the main menu. The bloom is system-wide defined, so you can't use this interaction for other things. The air tab is the only interaction you can use in applications to interact with objects. In one hand, it makes it easy to remember, but in the other hand, it takes away some freedom. And then there's Cortana. Cortana is Microsoft's intelligent, personal, digital assistant. She is great. She can answer every question.
For example, we could ask, where in Lugano can I get the best pizza?
There are 2,335,981,212,665 possible answers to that question.
Well, that was helpful. Thanks, Cortana. Well, since we work with a new kind of device, it also makes sense to offer new kinds of input. Since one of the great aspects of the HoloLens is that it works completely hands-free, we'd like to keep it that way. That's why we use devices like the ring scanner, seen here, or a more elegant solution, the Pro Glove, which also supports scanning QR codes.
But Sebastian, how is it to work with the HoloLens while wearing glasses?
Well, I'm wearing glasses as you can see, and I always keep them on while using the HoloLens, and I've never had any issues with it, so no problem at all.
Okay, cool. And how can we imagine a day at work with the HoloLens?
Well, for example, during boring meetings, I can just have my entertainment dancing on the table, or in the morning, I can easily read my news anywhere, Hands-free, of course. But let's get serious. What actual use cases are there for mixed reality?
There's a lot. We have desktop and screenless workplaces. We have holographic 3D modeling. We have remote support. The possibilities are endless.
Sounds great, but what does the post actually do with it?
Well, we have 4 main cases. First of all, we have the sorting rack. The sorting rack is used to manually sorting letters that we can't sort automatically, like special sendings. There we have 2 cases. One case is for external sendings for external companies, and one case is for internal sendings. Then we have the remote support. This is mainly used for maintenance and checkups in buildings or for machines. Then we have logistic cases. There we did some proof of concepts for improving warehouse processes and parcel sorting. And we have, last but not least, inventions, which we'll mention later on. But first, the sorting rack. This sorting rack is used, as I told you, for the manually sorting of letters. It has around 200 compartments, which are corresponding to an address. We have hundreds of these racks all over Switzerland. And as you can see on the right picture, actually all these compartments are with tiny letters or tiny stickers labeled, and these are all manually labeled. So it's not very practical. If anything in the route changes, we have to change the whole rack manually. So it was a very good example and a very good case for the HoloLens.
Right. So after we had this plan and vision figured out, we started a project week in which we developed a first prototype, which you can see here. As you can see, it was very colorful at that time, and this also led to some issues since people didn't see inside the rack. They would often just hit their hand on the rack itself since they didn't see inside the compartments. So since then, we learned a lot from it and developed a newer, better looking version. As you can see, we did some dramatic changes to the UI UX. So instead of those colorful fields, we now only show a border and some text. If then a user focuses on any field, it gets highlighted and shows the actual full address. Like this, we are able to provide the relevant information to the user without having to show too much. We also implemented a heads-up display so that you can read the text more easily from a distance. Then, to take out those letters, we also showed some additional information for special sendings and the queue in which order those compartments have to be sorted out, so it fits the route that the postman actually has to drive. Also, to take out letters, we tried to implement some hand tracking at first, so that it would recognize when you took out the letter of a compartment, but that sadly didn't work out so well. So we tried to implement another solution, which now works pretty well. In the end, we did this using the cursor, so if a user focuses on the field he has to take out, it turns yellow and then green and confirms this compartment. Like this, we are able to keep the hands free of the user and he can confirm his work with only small head movements.
I forgot a little thing about this rack. Of course, we tried digital displays, but in such a high number, these are very expensive and the maintenance pain would be huge. So, inventions. We had some inventions, like we tried to stay competitive, so we're working with OCR, image recognition, and other technologies to integrate in our applications to improve their efficiency. Here's an example for OCR. This is our OCR prototype. It can read handwritten text, and also it supports multiple languages. This is an example for image recognition. As you can see, I'm a 99% person, and I'm in front of a 96% laptop. So we can use image recognition for to detect specific objects, especially in an environment with moving parts, when we do some maintenance on machines to warn the user from dangerous objects. We for both prototypes used Azure Cognitive Services, but we're looking forward to use our own models in future.
So, how do we actually create an application for the HoloLens? Well, primarily we use Unity in combination with Visual Studio. So Unity is actually a gaming engine for those of you who know it, but it makes developing 3D applications pretty straightforward. The scripts in Unity are written in C#. That's mainly the reason why we use Visual Studio. We also use the mixed reality toolkit from Microsoft, which offers full integration into Unity. So everything like the room scanning and orientation of the device is handled for you. So it makes it pretty easy to get started with it. Lastly, we also use Vuforia for some of our cases, as Vuforia offers a nice solution to work with marker-based mixed reality. So you could put up an image somewhere and then show holograms relatively to it. There are also a few things to consider when designing applications for the HoloLens. Compared to classic desktop applications, you literally have a new dimension to work with, so you can finally use that vector geometry you learned at school. But this also brings some questions and issues in the development process. For example, you have to ask for the placement. Where should your application be placed? Should it be on a wall, on a table, on the ground, or should it just be floating in front of you? This is a pretty important question to ask early on in the process, as this determines your interaction with the application. Then there is also some changes to the input. In classic desktop applications, we often have some forms and fields where you have to type a lot. Since typing on the HoloLens is really a pain, you don't want that there. So try to focus more on information and visualization instead of some forms and fields. Then there are also some changes to the UI. On classic desktop applications, they do tend to get more minimalistic over time. On the HoloLens, we learn to be even more minimalistic than that. Since the field of view is pretty small on the HoloLens, every centimeter counts there. So you want to display only the relevant information to the user.
This is an example for an old 2D web application. You see some fields and information, and you use this with an old hand scanner. You were scanning your package, you went to a computer, and you filled in the information and everything. So it was a very good example for a proof of concept on the HoloLens. This is the same application on the HoloLens. So you have only the needed information above or on the parcel or moving with you.
Another challenge with the HoloLens is the performance. As previously mentioned, the HoloLens has only 2 GB of RAM, which also leads to some limitations. So if you're expecting that super high resolution gaming console for on your head, you'll have to wait a few years. That being said, the HoloLens actually manages to handle room tracking and orientation really well, so you don't have to worry about performance there. Still, to keep a good experience, you have to keep that frame rate high. So if you draw below 60 frames per second, you're doing something wrong.
As you work for a company and you have the HoloLens, for sure you want to integrate the HoloLens in your environment. So, and this was a challenge by itself. As we started with the HoloLens wasn't available in Switzerland. So because of that, Microsoft couldn't get us any support and left us with the mystery of how to integrate this in our environment. So at first we had the HoloLens, which is a cool device and great, but what to do with? So first we did configuration via USB, did the staging, and created a user account. Now we could use this device, but we realized very soon at this time it was a single user device. Not every person in our company is using his own device, so we use it with multiple people. So we had to reinstall the HoloLens and created an impersonal HoloLens account with Azure Active Directory. Of course, you want to manage this device, so we configured our mobile device management for hardening, certification, and the app installation, and of course, the Windows updates. So we were able to install our own app on the HoloLens. Great, but we can't communicate and have access to our application servers with an impersonal account. So we had to integrate in our app a login mask that we can log in with our personal account to access our application server.
So, another challenge we had with the HoloLens is actually the hardware itself. The head strap you see on the picture here is actually a pretty massive weak point of the HoloLens. Since we use those devices on a pretty regular base, more than half of those head straps broke at some point. Since Microsoft didn't really sell any replacement parts, we had to get creative by ourselves.
So we created our own prototypes for our own head mount. So as you see on the picture, this is our first prototype with an onion net, and it looked ridiculous. After some improvements, we created our final product, which we think is much more comfortable and easy to adjust, and it doesn't break. So if you want to try it, swing by our booth later on.
Yeah. So, what now? The HoloLens has been out for nearly 2 years, I think, and it still offers one of the best experiences in mixed reality. Nonetheless, there is some upcoming competition. For example, we have the Magic Leap, which was recently released. It offers actually a better display, better computational power, and eye tracking at a lower price than the HoloLens. So, pretty interesting. Then we have Leap Motion with their open source North Star project, which mainly focuses on hand tracking. This could also get really interesting as it is open source, so yeah. Then we also have the Intel Vaunt, which I personally see as a perfect example of how those devices may look in the future. Sadly, this device got discontinued earlier on in 2018, but we still may live to see devices like those in the future. So we also know that there is a new HoloLens upcoming somewhere in 2019, and although we don't know anything about it, we're pretty excited to see what it brings. And yeah, all I'd like to say is the future is now. Use it. Start working with those technologies. It's a great time to achieve something there. Sadly, we don't really have time for questions here, but if you have any questions, feel free to come by our booth and ask us directly. Yeah, thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much.